All right, so we'll get started, everybody. So it's the Great Barrington Planning Board meeting for Thursday, September 28th. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the planning board will be conducted both in person and by a remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with the right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, or for those who wish to do so remotely may by following the instructions on this agenda. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. And pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of a public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission from the chair. The listings of the agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. And per section 241(1) of the town code, except for procedural and housekeeping matters, town residents shall have the right to address the board on any item that requires a vote at a time before a board votes on that item. Such residents shall be allowed as much time as the proponents of an item is permitted to have. So let's see, this meeting is being recorded and we're all here in the room, so we don't need to do a. Jeremy is not here.
So we're not all.
So we're not all here in the room.
Yeah, but there's nobody on Zoom.
We don't have to, I was just gonna say, we don't have to do roll call attendance, but we can note that at present Jeremy's not here, and I haven't heard, oh, he says he's trying to come in on Zoom.
I don't see him.
Huh, okay.
The agenda link obviously works if you just.
Like we had 30 seconds from like explanation.
Oh, yeah.
Randy said it's easier to envision this on the big.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the,
Yeah.
that's something new with that.
All right, so we do have one board member who is joining us remotely. So we will go ahead and we'll do a roll call attendance. We'll start with those of us in the room and let Jeremy get loaded up. Jonathan, Jackie, Pedro,
Present?
Malcolm,
Here,
Randy here. Jeremy, are you here?
Here.
Okay, great.
on the move.
Exercise.
Are you in Agawam?
That's my, what was that?
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing it from my car. The coverage here is good though.
Okay, all right, great. So we'll go ahead and we will start with a Form A. Let's see. Mike, are you doing both of these? No, you're just doing the 688 Main Street.
Yeah.
Okay, so our first Form A is 688 Main Street. Mike Parsons here to tell us all about this A&R.
Mike Parsons from Kelly Granger Parsons here in Great Barrington. So this is the property that you probably know as Brazilians. Brazilians is owned by the Ricky Klein, who's passed away, and a revocable trust. He owns the land that the building sits on. His wife, Ann Klein, owns what is lot 1 and parcel 2. My clients, Dell and Georgette, have a contract to purchase all of this property from Ann Klein. And they're going to, well, from Ricky Klein's revocable trust and Ann Klein, and they're going to convey parcel 2, which isn't large enough to be a building lot, over to Matt Empermo at the mobile station.
Okay, so we have 2 parcels now, right?
Yeah, you have 2 parcels now, and you'll have
2 parcels when we're done,
Well, you'll have three
3 parcels
parcels when you're done, but they're gonna be
conveyed to
to,
the north and to the south.
yeah, to the north and to the south.
So did you say the kidneys are buying this?
Yes, Kim's buying all
Okay.
Is Brazilian staying there?
That's that's not an A and R question.
Yeah, I would tell you if I knew.
Well, I talked to him the other day and he said he thought he was.
Okay, well, then you know more than I do. I
Yeah,
have no
not
idea.
germane
That's
to
not
the
what
A and
else
R,
I-
not germane to the A and R. So we need to limit our discussion to zoning. Yeah.
Those types of discussions.
So, does anyone else have any questions? Pedro,
I don't know.
Malcolm?
No.
Jeremy, do you have any questions about this A and R? No? Okay.
Move to endorse.
Seeing none, we have a motion to endorse by
Second.
Jonathan, a second by Malcolm. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do roll call vote. We'll start with Jeremy
Aye.
and Jonathan,
Aye.
Pedro,
Aye.
Malcolm.
Aye.
Randy, aye. All right, I see you brought your own Sharpie or,
No, I brought that, you can use that one, use mine.
we need to pull a couple of copies.
I did get mine.
I think they were. I didn't get the bigger shot.
Thank you.
No, I think they were trying to get mine.
Is it silver?
I'll try to get out with it.
Okay.
I want to roll it up.
They were talking about.
Need, many more.
Maybe we're going digital.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Martin.
No. Whatever, he owns the old telephone building. You know, that.
Oh, Jamal.
Yeah, Jamal owns that, and they were trying to buy that from Jamal.
All right, Kim, are you all set?
Chris.
Mike, thank you.
Chris.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Checks have been received or will be received, okay.
My clients.
All right, we do not have a revised map for 35 Silver Street. So, seeing no second, map, we will not have any discussion on 35 Silver. And so we'll move on from Form As to the
Here it
minutes.
is.
Let's give ourselves a moment to gather ourselves and get organized before we proceed.
Before we adjourn.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. All right, so, next item of business are the minutes of September 14th. I think I saw 2 amendments. Did you, Chris? Did you? have amendments?
No,
No,
just
it's
Jonathan.
just, okay. So, do we have a motion to approve the minutes of September 14th as amended?
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Second by Malcolm. Thank you. We'll do roll call vote. We'll start with Jeremy. Jeremy?
I'm gonna recuse. I just read them, but I wasn't there.
Okay, recuse. Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Randy? Aye. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Next item is master plan review. So Chris, we wanted to leave this item on here because we didn't have the benefit of your wisdom and insights. But what we did at the last meeting was we took a look at the master plan sort of actionable items list that you've been maintaining. And we, briefly, there's been tons of progress in lots of areas, but there's also been no progress in other areas. And so as a group, we talked about on the basis of who the task was assigned to, splitting up the groups of tasks that are remaining to be addressed, and each board member taking on another committee or subcommittee to reach out to them, engage, make sure they are aware that these tasks sort of fell on their plate. Maybe they aren't aware, and have a dialogue about whether the tasks are something that are on their radar, in progress, not relevant, so that we can start to frame future discussions.
And if there's anything else that should be on the future.
I would like to thank Chris for creating that list initially, and Malcolm for breaking it up into all the different assignment groups. Do you have any concerns with how we're proceeding?
Nope.
Okay.
Looking through that thing, you've got to be so proud that you created this document how many years ago and it's still relevant. It's, it's amazing.
Well,
I mean,
not just me.
I know it wasn't just your document, but you were the driver for it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But I think that speaks to how the document was conceived and created by the planning board and select board at the time. I mean, there were a lot of different people at the table, representing the various groups who would be implementing most of the tasks. And they were there at the creation and they've carried it through either in regulation or in budgets or policies and procedures. So from the moment, even before it was published, many of the things were already getting accomplished. And I think that speaks to the power and the dedication of the people who were behind it. So
Yeah.
hopefully the next one will be as effective.
Absolutely.
And shorter.
I don't know about
You mean
that.
shorter volume wise or shorter time wise?
So just in terms of the number of items assigned to everyone, I know in some cases it's a lot of items, but maybe not too many boards. Is everyone, at least board members, I don't want to ask if you were comfortable, but are we comfortable with what we're tackling? I just want to be respectful of the fact that everybody's volunteering time. And Jonathan, do you have a comfort level in taking on anything else?
Well, I was going to go to the Council on Aging meeting on Wednesday, but they canceled it. And then I sent an email and I haven't heard back, so I don't know what the procedure is.
Okay. And then Chris, I know we sort of just said, town manager, town planner, DPW superintendent items, we wanted to leave under your purview. We weren't sure what the right way was to engage staff in that way, but if we can be helpful with some of those items.
Okay, great.
We'd be glad to interview you with your task.
Well, and then the other one, the Economic Development Committee, which was formed and then disbanded, and the Energy Committee, which I don't know if it exists anymore.
I don't think it does.
Yeah, they have tasks on there too, so we're gonna have to address them somehow. or another.
We thought we'd
Yeah.
put those under,
Yeah,
we thought we'd put those under select board initially.
maybe we'll
and
give them to Jeremy.
Seek their,
You just made it very-
He's smiling.
He's smiling.
He's still paying attention. So yeah, I think those are a couple of the things that we wanted to get a little feedback from you on, is the best way to reach out to staff about items that maybe are in a capital plan or a long range asset management plan. Best way to tackle items that have been assigned to a committee that is no longer in existence. Do they get reabsorbed by the select board and reappropriated to maybe an equivalent board? The sustainability committee comes to mind in relationship to some of the energy committee tasks.
I think that'd be fine to hand to the select board. Actually, probably better to staff. For committees that aren't in existence,
Okay.
let staff review, because some of the items may have been completed and then the committee went naturally out of existence.
Okay,
So why don't we check that?
okay,
And then some old items may still abide, they may still be relevant. Others may not be relevant or a priority at all. So,
okay, all right. And then in terms of initial outreach, I was hoping we could kind of take a standardized approach to that. I know I've emailed chairs and sometimes that doesn't work. Is a letter to the committee a feasible means of just saying, hey, we'd like to come to your next meeting and be more formal about it? Chris, what's your suggestion? I know I can get Steve Bannon and go talk to him, but some of the other committees, what do you find is the best way to engage them? Is it via email or should we be sending them a letter?
I would do both.
Okay.
Yeah, I would send it via snail mail and copy it on email.
Okay,
It's a formal approach.
Jackie, I don't remember, did we put together a suggested outline letter?
We don't have a draft one yet,
Okay,
but we can draw one up and get that to everybody.
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking just sort of like like something short, a paragraph that describes what the objective is and
like to meet
maybe
with them.
append the list of things or say we'd like to come and be on the agenda to have a discussion about master plan progress and where your board or committee sits, but kind of like be uniform in the communication. Does that sound
Well,
reasonable to everybody?
Shall I send a copy of what I already sent to Don Howe?
Do you have a template that you're suggesting we might be able to
Well,
use?
why not? Let us look at it.
Yeah.
I think
That's the historic district.
Yeah,
Okay,
tailor it.
okay, that'd be great. Thanks, Malcolm.
I'll send it to you and Jackie, and you guys can do with
Okay.
it what
Yeah,
you
no,
wish.
that's okay. Just so we're kind of keeping on, singing out of the same songbook, so to
Yep.
speak. So how does it sound, to try to have all of our engagement done by our November meeting? Take the month of October. Do you guys think that's enough time? I know sometimes the committees don't meet, so maybe it's our December.
Well, one of my committees doesn't meet until November 11th,
Okay,
so.
so let's say our December meeting, our first December meeting, assuming we only have.
That's a Saturday.
That's November 4th now, is that a Saturday?
That's a holiday.
And it's all.
Well, it's not November 11th,
Which committee was this?
it's my committees.
Okay, why don't-
Let's see,
Okay,
it's
let's do
the
this in-
6th, November 6th.
So our meeting would be, we usually only have one meeting in November because of Thanksgiving, so our
Mhm.
meeting would be the 9th. Is November 9th too soon? That's only 5 weeks, or should we do
For what? For
December
us to do
14th?
our-
To like
For everybody
report
to
back,
get in
to
front
go
of their
through-
committees.
Oh, to get in front of the committees. by
to have
deadline.
gotten in front of the committees and come back with any
Sure.
feedback.
Do you think the planning board is gonna be ready? That's a lot on our plate. We really have to, we're kicking the can down the road.
Should have got it on the agenda tonight.
Well, we can put it on the agenda tonight?
No, I don't think so. Well, I don't know that we're ready to do that. I think we should do it at our next
But
meeting.
I have a request to make
Sure,
before we adjourn,
okay,
for us to, look at all the ones that
are on the planning
are
board list.
in our purview.
Yes,
I mean, I've gone through and some are, left totally not completed or to be done or something.
mhm,
But then there's there's this carryover. We did everything, but we didn't do this, or we didn't resolve this, but this is still an open question.
mhm.
And do we just simply item by item walk through them in order of appearance, or is it more efficient to rank order with somebody who really knows the planning board? And which is gonna be a
I
lot.
feel like Jonathan really knows the planning board, so we can probably offer some perspective, but I think we do want to step through it. We're gonna ask the same of the other boards,
Then
so,
we'll just, because all those things that have yellow on them are things that we should address.
yeah,
And have you guys look at it and say, oh, well, we can't do that, but we can do this, and this is, or let's just
That's
not.
exactly the kind of discussion we want.
Yeah, for every single
Mhm.
item that's relevant to us, still
Mhm.
relevant, and
Sounds like a long meeting.
that's what I'm saying, it's a lot.
If we don't do it, who's going to?
well, when we get to town planners report, if it doesn't look like the next meeting is very heavy, then we could spend the bulk of that meeting going through the planning board master plan to-do list.
That's a good idea.
Okay, so
Can I
we'll,
tell you how useful blowing it up to this
yeah,
scale?
I'm
So you
thinking
can
of like
actually
plotting
read
it
it
on
or-
giant paper and then we can post it somewhere.
Where did you print
I went to Staples
it? Okay.
and they did it, and they're very nice, it's readable.
Okay,
You can print
all right,
And he
so
can do it
Can
too.
you print it? I can't. print.
I can print gigantic stuff
Hmm.
and I will not
Yeah.
charge you people anything, so if you want copies, let me know, we can make that happen.
So I have a question. 'Cause
Yes.
At the last meeting, I think I was supposed to go to tree committee, but there are no assignments for tree committee. Should I still go and ask them if they want to add anything?
There's
to that?
no,
Well, so that gets into the next thing I wanted to bring up, but I just want to be clear, do we want to be resolved by September 14? Like kind of have a report out on, not September, December 14. Sorry, I'm going back in time. December 14, kind of our broader report out for outreach.
Well, let's try, let's use that as a goal.
Okay.
And if we miss it, we miss it.
We'll try that
Go
as a
for it.
goal then. Okay, so then, yes, Pedro, to your question, there are then a number of committees that have been formed since the master plan. And I was just looking at the list and there's like at least 8, maybe 10. And I don't know if you have like a timeline of when committees have been formed.
No, I could.
It looks like it's the tree committee, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Yeah.
Was the Commission on Disability formed before?
No.
That's new, right? CPC,
Yeah.
Housatonic Improvement Committee, Downtown Cultural Committee, Cable Advisory?
Always been there.
Oh, it has?
Well, not always.
it's not on the, there's no master plan items for it though.
I'm surprised actually in terms of.
Yeah, the
infrastructure,
cable, yeah.
but, 8-Town School Committee, that's new, obviously. There were maybe two more commissions, like a Transportation Commission. And now I'm going off the top of my head and I can't remember, but, so there's 10 more?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And what do you do with something like DAC, which is mentioned in, as part of a larger group of people who are supposed to be working together on something? And
The DAC is
it's not given the responsibility.
it's the Design Advisory Committee?
Yeah,
Yes.
and
it's under the planning board, so
so I'd like Chris's opinion, but the way I was thinking about it was to look at whatever their charter or forming objective was, and if DAC, I don't know, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but DAC feels to me like it's meant to respond to specific applications, not really set policy, whereas committees that are meant to like vet issues and bring them to the table for policy, I think those are the ones we really want to focus on engaging with,
I
because
think that's the approach.
keeps it clean.
yeah. Plus, literally, when I looked at the webpage, how many committees are there? There's like 25? I don't know, there's a lot of committees out there, so. So I thought if we focused on the ones that have like a policy or implementation role, that would be more fruitful.
Makes sense.
But I'm not sure how to divvy these up, and I think we wanna talk about like, what are your primary goals and objectives, and where are you at in achieving those, and what are you seeing as issues coming forward? I mean, this is.
Are
I'm
we
just trying
talking
to
about
start
the
a
commission,
discussion.
the committees that we haven't
New
assigned?
committees, yeah,
No, I mean, don't you think that's for the next phase?
I do, yeah,
when we
but
start-
just to Pedro's point
Yeah.
about tree commission.
Yeah, the tree committee,
This would be like a
Mhm.
after January
Yeah.
conversation, I think.
so the tree committee existed, but there's no master plan items for it. Is that what
I believe
there's no
that's the
master plan
case,
items? Okay,
yeah.
so much for tree committee.
Was it created after the previous master plan?
I think it was created after.
Yeah.
Was it?
I don't recall.
So high level then would
Look
be,
at number 31, it does make reference to the tree committee. It is called out with lead and responsibility.
okay,
Oh, so it did exist.
Yeah.
Michelle, what's the earliest date
yeah.
on that plaque? Oh, so it did exist.
Oh, is that a tree committee plan?
okay. So tree stays on, and maybe they only have one item.
It
Okay.
basically is how to better care for town trees, utilize resources.
So stepping back then, framework is outreach to boards for the remainder of this year, and that boards that existed and were assigned tasks in the master plan this year, and then have us as a board regroup on our outreach in December, and then look at January, February outreach to new boards and committees.
And then,
Two-phase
and then
and
regroup,
broader,
figure out how
yes.
big, whether we're dealing
You
with
said we have
a
the
car or a
community,
bread box.
And then we have the
Yeah.
community to address.
Correct.
Because once we have our collected information, then we can get out into the neighborhoods.
Right.
If, I think that would be determined by whether what we come up with is a lot of new stuff. Or whether it's just continuing, well, we still should
Just to keep them.
reach out, yeah,
informed,
okay, good.
Okay.
And a related question?
Yes.
Because I'm going back to what you said earlier, like something that needs to be underscored in our notes for the update of the master plan has to do with global climate change.
Mhm.
And so do we bring that up? That they don't bring it up and it's not necessarily in your purview. But if we're all trying to be paying attention to this,
Mhm.
should we not reflect on those considerations with the perspective of each one of these committees?
Mhm.
Because that would give us something to talk about with everybody,
Something new.
something new and
Have you considered the impact of climate change on the town?
on anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it would just stir up new ideas and reaffirm certain common themes.
Yep.
If you believe in climate change.
Well,
Well,
we a survey.
All right. Okay. So that seems like a framework. Malcolm has shared his transmittal communication, and we can use something similar to begin outreaching to the boards we've been assigned to. Good luck. So is there anything else anybody wanted to cover on master plan review? No, we're all clear. Jeremy, you good? Thumbs up? Okay, great.
Is there a point, Randy, or board members where you see going back to the select board in a joint meeting saying, here's, maybe in the spring or?
I think so. We had talked last time about kind of high level, maybe being ready to include something in our report to town meeting.
But there was also the mention of when we said that we were thinking about doing listening,
Mhm.
community listening meetings.
Yeah.
And then two of the select board members, got excited seemingly.
Yeah.
And so the great idea, got to do it. So that's something that we should, once we finish with the community meetings, reporting back.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I see it as like a bunch of concentric rings, right? So we're gonna start with people who had assignments in the existing master plans. We're taking stock of where we're at. And then reaching out to the new committees and then reaching out wider to the community.
And then bringing the select board in somewhere.
Well, so I'll engage them specifically on their tasks,
But
but
I mean,
yeah,
on our findings.
absolutely. Yeah, we'll have another joint meeting with them or something, maybe. We'll see how it all comes together, maybe in the spring.
Because the goal was to maybe present something at the town meeting.
To do report, or
Yeah.
we do an annual report for town meeting.
Yeah.
And be able to include an update or status on master plan in that report.
Yeah.
So
But there's nothing there wouldn't be anything for town meeting to act on.
I don't believe there'd be anything to act on. It would just be information to a large group of people.
Yeah,
Unless something jumped out at us.
yeah.
I think that remains to be seen, and I think we have to be open to like whatever we hear from the other boards and committees, right? Do you have any suggestions for us, Jackie, given your communications background?
What about jumping out? What?
Just
No.
engaging in outreach.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I think we're on the right track.
Okay, great, thank you. Industrial zone. So Chris, at we left this one on also because we didn't have your insights. So there was some discussion at the last meeting about the I zones and whether or not they're applicable where there is currently no industrial development in place, and maybe likely not to be industrial development, not wanting to create nonconformities for industrial uses, but recognizing that there are some inconsistencies in the table of uses around residential use in the I zone. Pedro can probably cite these off the top of his head. I want to say with single family, it's not okay, but multifamily are okay, and that seemed a little inconsistent. So two tracks of thinking. One, do we want to leave the I zone sort of in place where it's currently shown, but adjust the uses to try and eliminate the inconsistencies? Or do we want to rethink the I zone in a little bit more comprehensive fashion and apply a zone differently than what's currently in our zoning? And is I zone relevant, I guess, too?
So one thing to keep in mind is there are two different I zones, an I and an I two.
Yeah.
In the I zone, in the industrial zone, there is definitely not a preference for housing. The preference is for industrial type uses. In the I two zone, there's an allowance for a special permit possibility for multifamily, multi-unit housing. So when we say that there might be inconsistencies, Brandy, that single family is not allowed, but multifamily is allowed, that's not quite strictly true. So multifamily is not allowed in the I, and it could be allowed in the I two. That's clear.
You can do a mixed use project.
Two families by right in the I two.
It's the idea that you can have two families, but not single family or multi-family.
And
That's the
that
inconsistency.
I don't
Yeah.
understand.
And that you
Yeah.
could do a mixed use project, but not a multifamily project.
Right. Because mixed use is, the I zones have always been treated as, areas where there may be job creation. And mixed use could have, businesses or industry on a lower level or on another part of the site, and there could be, take a mill, where part of the site might be a job creating, a production use, a distribution use, of repair, some sort of industrial use. And another building on the site or upstairs might be housing. That's why mixed use is allowed specifically.
Right, but a mixed use does not mandate that it has to be an industrial use.
Correct,
It could be anything.
correct.
So somebody can go in and do the minimum mixed use and put a storage facility in it. And then build a multi, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I don't disagree.
Uh-huh.
So,
So then we went sort of region by region through where the I zones are. And thank you we didn't call it I two specifically here, but we did look at that as well. And in some instances, the zoning seemed to be sort of irrelevant, in the case of, for instance, the I zone on North Plain Road. I can't think of like what the closest cross street is, but
Hemlock
is it Hemlock Hill?
the old Squaw Peak.
That is now an APR, like, should we modify the map and take the I out of it? Some of the I zones are in resource areas. Does that make sense to leave them as I instead of R4, for instance? So those were the kind of things we were wanting to get your input on.
I would say that the I zone on North Plain Road, like Hemlock Hill, does it go quite as far north as Woodland Hill, the old Squaw Peak? Not sure.
It's a piece that Jane Iredale just bought.
Plus Sean Stanton's farm. So, many people used to call this area at one point, somebody wanted to do a golf course in there. It's the probably 100+ acres on the east side of the railroad tracks. On North Plain Road, it's the south of Division Street. Across from Hemlock Hill-ish and Abbey Hill area, not quite Abbey Hill. So the development potential there is limited by several things. Number one, the railroad tracks. There's no legal frontage for those lots. So development there is stunted because of that. They're not developable lots.
The
Secondly,
state didn't think that about Sean's apartment.
Yeah, he did some magic, right?
not true.
He gave $900,000, something was not developable.
There was a Form A created based on, I can't remember, but there was a plan that came forward
The railroad's coming.
So, in any case, development there is limited, you know, because of the railroad and lack of frontage. It's also limited because most of it now is APR, agricultural preservation restriction. And then a second one, a third parcel just north of that, which is the subject of the land trust's CPA application this year, was bought by Jane Iredale for permanent farming. So there won't be industrial uses. There's no need to even remap that area.
Yeah, you don't have to do it.
It's,
Because
the zone there is now irrelevant.
Mhm.
The only, you know, again, I just bring this up because it happened in Lee that if there's ever a need for a toxic dump, a company can come in and by right, they can go in there and dump.
So I'm not sure where that's coming from, but if there is a need
It's
for a
in
toxic
48.
dump, it's probably driven either by federal or state law, and local zoning has nothing to do with it.
And you
It's
won't
in-
be able to do it on an APR.
It's in 40A. I mean, it's clear, it's in 40A. But somebody could buy the property, take it out of APR.
No, you can't take it out of it.
Why not? Yes, you can. You can- And pay whatever taxes you owe in arrears and
No,
take it out.
APR is permanent.
Permit.
Yeah.
So what
It's
is
not,
it?
it's not. it's
What's the
not-
kind of restriction that you can take out?
Chapter 61 is merely a tax thing. APR is actually buying the development rights. And no longer, those development rights no longer exist.
And the state has the right of first refusal.
Permanent restriction.
Well,
You have to get act of the legislature.
Are
I'm
good.
just saying, man, the whole thing is not an APR. There's still, and there is a possibility. And for those who say it'll never happen, will it happen in Lee? If those who say that it can't happen near a wetlands area or near a natural resource, it happened in Lee.
So
It can
why
almost
wouldn't it be
happen
able to
here.
happen in a residential zone?
It won't, because the 40A allows you to do that by right. The state allows anybody to do it, to supersede zoning, supersede local laws.
Yeah, so what does it
So
matter?
what
what
does it
zone?
matter?
If it's
There's no-
residential, you can't do it. If it's, because if it's zoned industrial, you can do that. That 40A allows it. If it's zoned industrial, 40A allows it to become a toxic waste dump.
I thought you were saying 48 allows the zoning to be superseded.
No, if it's zoned industrial, it's allowed, it doesn't matter what the local, I mean, there's two tiers to it, but generally somebody can come in and put a toxic waste dump if it's in any land that's industrially zoned in the state.
I see, okay. Okay,
So,
That's, you know, I mean, again, that's part of the concern, and part of the concern is these industrial uses, all of our industrial zones are surrounded by residential. That's why the residential prohibitions that we have or inconsistencies that we have don't make sense either, because, and Malcolm brought up, well, nobody's ever gonna build anything in the industrial zone because they wouldn't want to be next to an industrial use. But at the same time, an industrial use can prop up right next to to a residential zone in all of these districts. So-
in the I district,
In all of the I
Right.
districts, they're all surrounded by residential, so you know what I'm trying to say is that it's doesn't make sense, or
Well,
it
we
makes
talked
sense,
about
it's
this
just that
last-
there's no change, there's no, what's the, what am I looking for?
transition,
There's
looking
no,
for a transition zone between the
yeah,
residential.
there's no transition zone, it's one to one. You know, feedback, you know, if you,
I think I mean, I'm not entirely a fan of getting rid of the industrial zones because, you know, we have previously talked about them being potential sites that can be available for different types of economic development, right? And we're not gonna be able to sit here tonight and like envision what it might be in 10 years. I'd be more inclined to look at the inconsistencies around housing and also whether or not uses require a special permit or are by right. particularly if we're concerned about transitions between industrial zones and R4 or other residential districts. Because I think you have to look at things on a case by case basis, establish buffers, have setbacks. You need to understand what the potential impacts may be of a use, and we just can't predict that right now, sitting here in these chairs with nothing before us and only hypotheticals.
I get it, and you guys have expressed that to me, so my idea would be to not touch it, but maybe deal with the housing like you're saying. We could apply a different zone to it, which would be complicated. But it's important to know that really the only things that would not really be allowed would be a contractor's yard. You know, light manufacturing is the big one. Gravel loom and a saw log mill. Those are the things that are, you know, in there by right that aren't allowed anywhere else in town. So those are the three things. I mean,
Well, it seems
the
like.
light manufacturing is the big one. I mean, but the other four or the other three to me are not so consequential.
But aren't there already existing industrial uses in at least the I zones up near Houstonic?
Yeah.
And
And down, you know, the one
in South
that's the
Main
one
as
that
well.
makes sense to me,
Yeah.
the one in South Main is the one that makes the most sense. The other
Well,
ones are just like little islands within these gigantic residential.
But what are we
districts.
gonna do with the industrial uses that are already there? If we
Yeah, I
cut-
mean, they were put up
Mhm.
around industrial
I know, it's a
uses.
problem.
Well,
I mean,
Well, grandfathering would be more of a problem.
I mean, I don't know that it would.
Yeah,
Why?
because it makes any change there even more difficult. Suppose they wanted to improve it.
They
Yeah.
could, you know, I mean, and we've been through this with the airport, they can improve what's already there. What you're talking about is if they wanna add, they
Right.
wanna get bigger and grow, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a business.
We need jobs.
Well, I mean, again, we can get jobs in so many other sectors in this use category, you know, and we'd only be losing jobs from three uses, you know, light manufacturing is not the only job creating use. I get it, it's a tough sell, you guys don't seem to be up for it, you know, we're gonna come across this again, we came across it at Newsonville, we came across it just a couple weeks ago downtown, or, you know, on South Main, it's gonna come up again and again. And it's gonna be a problem, I think, and that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. I do think that we should give some thought to the housing. Because again, it's surrounded by housing, so why wouldn't you be able to do housing in there? If somebody wants to go in and invest in housing and he has a market for people to live in an industrial zone, why wouldn't you do it? All the people at Van Dusenville, they live next to an industrial site.
Do you have a specific proposal?
No, I'm not.
It's
There
funny
would be a
because my
conflict of
proposal was
interest
just,
if I did.
my proposal was just the opposite. I was gonna suggest that we get rid of the two-family and make it consistent with the other residential uses, or if we're gonna have any residential uses in the I zone, it should be a special permit. Because we should encourage residential housing in a zone that we're hoping will generate jobs. And they still can. I mean, there's nothing that says that somebody can't put jobs in our town unless we remove all the zones that they can.
I know, the jobs thing is kind of problematic, because these types of jobs that go in industry, I think are the least likely ones to show up. I think the job creation zones are all up and down Main Street. You know, South Main all the way up Stockbridge Road, that's where I think the jobs are gonna come. But I'm open to having this discussion too, because it
Yeah.
makes sense, but again, there's not a one-to-one relationship here between the residential zones and the industrial zones, it's literally back to back, so.
No, I
And
mean,
some of that
and,
is
yeah,
historic development patterns, right?
Sure.
You know, I mean, think about historically Houstonic, it's a mill community, right? And the housing was created to support the mill workers, and they wanted to be close and they needed to walk, and that, you know, that's what established that pattern.
I know, but you know, history is ongoing. And
History is
for the last
ongoing.
50 years, we haven't had that situation at the Houstonic.
That's
You know,
true, but
and it's
I don't
not
know
coming
that I
back.
wanna preclude it. And manufacturing can take other forms. It doesn't have to be mills, right? It could be, you know, like in Lee, they're manufacturing sterile materials for the medical industry. I mean, those are good jobs. I wouldn't say that those are less preferable than jobs in the retail sector. And I almost think the jobs in the retail sector are significantly less preferable than a skilled manufacturing job.
But
if we
that's
could
not
get
the
something
only
like
thing
that.
that can happen on Stockbridge Road or South Main. Have a variety of use of that, including some forms of
And we should
manufacturing.
try and encourage it, definitely,
Well,
definitely.
Sony does it.
I mean, I appreciate your suggestion, Malcolm. I'm sort of more aligned there, like correct the inconsistency in the two family. Does anybody else have any other thoughts? Jeremy, do you have any thoughts?
I would just say in areas where multi-unit residential development would make sense in industrial zones, the town already has created the zoning provisions to allow that. There's the smart growth overlay zone, which covers the Houstonic Mills as well as the Rising Mill, as well as the Houstonic Mill overlay district, which encourages revitalization of those mills.
And the I two was created for that.
Yeah, too. So in areas where multi-unit residential could make sense, those provisions, those allowances already exist.
But they all come with caveats.
Mhm.
And you could, somebody like me could argue that it also creates inconsistencies in zoning
Mhm.
and in the maps.
I don't know, I think when we put the SCOD together, we thought that that was actually like honoring that historic development pattern, right? To allow for a mixed use development, recognizing that history keeps moving on, right? But that we had a built fabric we needed to work with.
I get it.
Okay. So in terms of whether or not we want to make this a zoning amendment, is there a strong opinion about amending the table of uses with regard to residential uses in the I zone? For making an adjustment?
Jeremy?
So I think we should, at least at some point, really address the no transition zones. Because, I mean, you know, we've been given that example twice, right? With marijuana cultivation right next to housing, and now it's right next to dense housing. And, you know, so maybe we do want to think about like some kind of buffer zones or transition zones between housing and, you know, just the straight residential zones and the I zones.
I guess I would just ask you, Jeremy, to look at the existing fabric. I don't know that that's realistic. That's why I was saying that I think it would be more practical to consider things in a special permit process where you could have a buffer as part of the requirements or have screening or, you know, do something to manage the transition based on the specific characteristics of what the development proposal is.
Yeah.
So Chris, when I can't access the current zoning, it's only 22 is all that's available on the website. When we changed three family to three family by right, is that now by right in the I zone? Because it was prohibited, it was a special permit or it was prohibited or something.
Prohibited.
I don't know offhand.
But that's something we should look at, because if we're making it by right.
Well, we can't change it unless we know we're changing.
What?
Yeah, we need the latest to change.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so it sounds like we should leave this on the agenda. And look at the current three family by right, make sure that that's included.
It is. Yeah,
It
the
is,
multifamily, up to 8 units is by right is prohibited in the I zone.
Yeah, I think we kept the
We kept the,
permissions in the columns the same, we just changed the rows.
change the definition of those. Yeah.
But didn't we put 2 and 3 family together?
Yeah, 2 and 3, so 2 and 3 family are allowed by right in the I zone. And the I two, by the way.
Mhm.
So Chris, why the 2 and 3 family and not a single family?
I think
Or
we
the
belong.
single family?
I think it was an oversight.
I think
I
we
don't
belong.
think I think that's just like a legacy thing, because I don't think that was any action this board has taken. Let's allow single family right next to,
Well,
somebody's car
to be-
detailing place.
To be fair,
Yes.
where the I two is, that was all industrial.
Mhm.
And there was no housing allowed. So we created the I two to allow housing there because it's so close to downtown.
Sure.
That's why. And, why single families not right? I don't know.
So like, it
Well,
seems like a
it's not by
legacy item.
right. See, the single, I mean, the I two is inconsistent even. Because the single family requires a special permit,
I understand.
the 2 and 3 family do not. I mean, we just put Ys across there. We didn't think about where we were
Well,
putting them.
I think there was some thought. I think for the I two zone, which primarily is back here behind the railroad tracks, a denser development that might occur from a 2 or 3 family
Right,
is more preferable than one single family.
right.
But then we require special permits for 4 and more.
Presumably because the impacts could be that much greater.
I don't think we,
So
I think you're giving us
I
more
think
credit
it's
than
sort
we
of
deserve.
Viewed as a single unit on an industrial parcel land is a waste of that land use.
Yeah.
For just one residential. And I think that's probably the legacy. It's either that. Well, it's that and partially wanting to preference industrial uses in industrial areas. So in the past, I think a single family use in an industrial zone required an acre of land. Which was clearly, and then the industrial uses required only 5,000 square feet or something like that. So it was clearly a preference for industrial uses and jobs rather than one unit that kind of wastes otherwise productive land for job creating uses.
Okay. So where does that leave us? Do we want to revisit the table of uses and look at whether or not it needs to be amended?
Mhm.
Okay. So we'll narrow our discussion to that item.
I also think that, I don't know how much trouble it is to change the map, but what's the point of having a big I zone where there's no possibility of eyes, on North Plain Road?
I'd say we wait until we're amending the map for other purposes.
Okay. But I think it's worth doing. Why have a developer look at Great Barrington and see a big I zone?
Yeah.
Seems empty and developable. It's not.
Or a business?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Good discussion. Thank you. Housing opportunities. Pedro, do you have a draft congregate living zoning that you have found that you think is
No, I didn't.
good?
I can put one together. I think.
We talked
Not
about,
actively. I think that thinking, this week that that article that I sent everybody, about this, the congregate living that the mayor in New York City is proposing is interesting because it talks a lot about the history and the problems with this type of living. And in the article, they mentioned a few restrictions that may be imposed on that law. One of them would be to only allow that type of development from a nonprofit that's going to service the development. So I think maybe that could be for those of us here who find a problem with this type of arrangement. Maybe that could be something that could be written into the law that would sort of ease the burden or ease the fears. But if you'd like, I can draft something and We can look at it next.
It doesn't have to be a nonprofit, it could be just deed restricted.
I think, well, I'd like to know what Chris thinks, about like trends in housing that you're aware of and whether or not you're seeing any sort of rise in congregate living zoning and, you know, what pros and cons are maybe out there in terms of the planning sphere. In terms of what we've talked about so far, I mean, I think Pedro, Malcolm and I have both been a little bit leery about this type of use, just in terms of like quality of living. And I know that you are very concerned about people having a quality environment to live in. So I don't think that's like an oversight on your part. I just think it's, when I get online and I start researching this, it doesn't come back with a lot of really positive information. And so I want to just, if we're going to discuss this moving forward, like discuss it in a way that we think can be effective and not legalize a substandard form of housing.
Well, that substandard form of housing happens because you've got deadbeat landlords, right?
Sure.
So as I mentioned, we can put provisions in a bylaw that prevents that type of activity by forcing it to only happen under the guidance of a nonprofit, either a nonprofit housing authority or some other state-sponsored situation where they are going to be, you know, the owners of the project and the servicers of the project. That it's obviously, it was a concern. It was, again, I encourage you to read the article if you haven't, because it talks a lot about these types of fears. But at the same time, I can send you maybe half a dozen projects that I'm aware of. A couple of them that are in and around the Boston area, in fact, that have sprouted up in there in the last year or two, or maybe the last 5 years. That,
You know, we're getting our second, right? The Thornwood.
I know.
Yeah. So,
In terms of the
But
exam,
if I can just respond to what Malcolm just said, the whole purpose of me bringing this forward is so that it actually can happen. Because the only reason that they can do it is because they have special permits to do transient
yeah,
living.
and they have to get people to sign leases every month. I
So
mean, it's crazy.
so think about that, right? That you have somebody who's willing or has the necessity for this type of housing, but has the uncertainty that they have to renew every month. That's not a good living situation for anybody either.
although, I mean, I would just push back on that a little bit. I think there are a lot of rental units that are on a month-to-month basis, right? And so how do you see that as different?
But you don't have to sign a lease.
You don't have to sign a lease, I mean, because it's a rental, it's a full dwelling unit. This isn't. This is required by law.
And even if it's month to month, you're not in fear of being kicked out every month.
Is that a legitimate fear, though?
Oh my God. Okay, have you heard the term?
Yeah,
housing
But
I'm just
it
saying,
also
like,
makes
any
the,
instances in Great Barrington, is that a legitimate
I
fear?
think absolutely.
Yeah, people have had their apartments sold out from under them. You read that.
No. I'm talking about the Windflower Inn.
Oh.
We're talking about the Windflower Inn and Thornwood Inn
Right.
taking on these congregate living arrangements, and that
Okay.
one of the limitations is that people have to sign month-to-month agreements. And the comment you guys made, if I understood it correctly, was that creates insecurity. And my question is, does it really in this instance? I understand in general it might, but in this instance, does it?
Well,
And I
without
don't know if that's the case.
interviewing the people, we wouldn't know.
But
And
we can
if people,
speculate.
but if people are
But-
sophisticated enough, they would know what the situation is that the construct got themselves into, that have to do this. But if they're not sophisticated enough to know that, they may be.
Are we
Yeah.
addressing a problem that doesn't exist? That's really what I'm trying to get
no,
at.
but
We're not-
on
we're
the
addressing
development
the-
side though,
Yeah,
what
Yeah.
about on so you're looking at it just from the renter side. What about on the development side? Like how easy is something like this to develop if it's existing housing, but not an inn, right? So if it's not permitted to be a B&B or an inn or whatever, or if someone wants to develop this from scratch, or let's say let's say the Houstonic Mills, like if they wanted to go in there and do this, like what kind of permitting process are we talking about? Is it easy or is it super difficult? And so I
Right
don't
now,
think it's
there's no
just
avenue.
like,
Right now, there's no avenue for that.
yeah.
There's no
And
way
so
for that.
that's why I think this is really worth looking at, because this is like another type of housing that we're not really providing until now, right? And this is like, it feels like a niche kind of, like you would think like the young people that are looking for like some kind of community, maybe, people that are really looking to really downsize and want to be social, I mean, there's all kinds of things that this can fit, but it seems like, at least from, their experience with the Windflower, it's, like they weren't able to rent out their bigger unit in this way, right? And so now they're trying to now they're in the process of changing that. So they're trying to get some funding to change that. But I think there's definitely a place for this. I think we should really look at it and not just leave it to organizations that are going to just try to find these B&Bs or inns or whatever and turn them over. I mean, if they want to develop, and it looks like there's more interest, right? It's not just, so there's more interest in trying to do this. And, I mean, why not? I mean, I think, the kinds of concerns that we have, I think can be addressed like by Pedro's, the idea of putting it on, it has to be some sort of nonprofit, right? With a certain kind of, whatever, or
Yeah.
either stateside or nonprofit that's, looking to, manage the housing.
Okay, no, that's all good input. Thanks, Jeremy.
I'll take
Oh, sure. Eileen, did you have a comment?
I have a question. Why isn't this a lodging house? And the reason I ask is that when, I forget her name, was putting in a lodging house on Main Street, which was allowed, what she was describing is the description that fits Thornwood or Windflower.
That's a good question, Eileen, and I'm gonna see if Pedro can recall. So I think we've been trying to move in a direction to align the zoning code with what's in the building code in terms of definitions, and I think Pedro's ready to like give you the details.
Well, in our bylaw
Oh.
defines a lodging house as a one-family dwelling with 5 or fewer guest rooms where one or more occupants are primarily permanent in nature, and compensation is provided for the guest rooms with 5 or fewer guests.
And the reference in the table is to tourist home for transit guests.
Yeah.
And
So-
the tourist home is defined as any establishment renting more than 3 but less than 11 rooms
Yeah.
on a nightly basis.
And a boarding house is 11 rooms or more?
Boarders are even less. It's just a household, not more than 3 rooms or boarders is permitted.
So we have 3 definitions that have sort of accumulated in the code over time, Eileen.
Yeah,
And we've been trying to like reconcile them against the Massachusetts building code. And that's kind of part of how this discussion has evolved. I don't think we have the answers yet. But that's what we're trying to figure out.
No, what's interesting here is the fact that the names that you just read, like lodging and this, that, and the other, sound so friendly. And the other gets me right to SROs and a lot of, and so, I mean, is there, because it's a way of looking at it and thinking about it and feeling about it.
Right.
And I don't know where we are in that.
So some of that I think is scale, right? So 5 units seems rather small, more family-like, if we've got 30, I think the scale is maybe a little different. So I agree with you that the language will be important, but I think right now we were trying to figure out initially if we had something in our current definitions that we could work with, because that would make sense, right? Build off of our existing code. But I think what we've actually discovered is we've got a little bit of like inconsistency and then some lack of compatibility with the state code, and then maybe a definition that doesn't quite hit the mark of what we're seeing in terms of the use of these, or the repurposing of these
And do
two
we have any
structures.
sense of what scale might be the most in demand here? You know, are we talking about
Well-
5 units or 11, or is it just available property? Or if it's starting from scratch, do we know that
I think-
people are more inclined to choose this arrangement versus that?
I don't know. I don't know, Pedro, if you've run across anything that talks about scalability or what's a manageable scale.
I don't know the manageable scale, but I can tell you that at Thornwood, they have 11 units, they want to add 3, and they've already got tenants for it, and they don't even have possession of the property. They already have people who live there, so the need is, you know, outstanding.
But there's
Um,
needs practicality and
And wind
useful
flowers,
scale.
wind flowers are even bigger though,
Yeah, and they're packed,
I'm sure.
waiting lists over there.
I mean, my personal philosophy on housing types is like variation is, I think, healthy in a community, you know, some degree of variation. And I think this board has sort of adopted that philosophy in trying to like take a wide ranging approach to creating opportunity for a lot of different types of housing. I don't think that always works. Like, we love the idea of ADUs, and there have only been like 6 of them in
I mean, when you
10
ask,
years,
when you
but
ask the question of practicality, I mean, what are you thinking? Because I'm thinking what's practical means, you know, how much traffic can it sustain,
All of the above.
parking and all of this stuff, I mean.
And this is almost by definition affordable, whether it's private or nonprofit, because of the scale of it. And so, you know, we're not gonna get we're not gonna get new construction.
No,
Yeah,
this
seeing
is
that.
probably not, but I mean,
We're gonna get
the practicality of a project would be based on, you know, many factors, starting with the size of the land, the size of the building, the whole thing.
can I get Jeremy's comment, because he's got his hand politely raised?
So this is like one of the things, so the idea about bringing in developers to talk. So I mean, this is like one of the questions I have, like for Construct CDC, is like, what are they looking for, right? Because I mean, at this point, they have to find these inns or B&Bs, and sort of like the scale of them is sort of dictated by the properties they find. But if that wasn't the limitation, like in terms of their need and what they're able to manage, what would they be thinking? And so I'm interested to hear, like on the developer side, what are they looking at? But in terms of when the housing subcommittee is going to be able to probably get them in, like we're already look like it's not going to be until December meeting until we have an opening. So I don't know if the planning board wants to invite instead for this specific question, or if we just want to reach out.
I don't know if I want to jump over the subcommittee. I mean, you guys are doing good work, and I think let it play its course.
I mean, I just think this is, I mean, I think getting developers input for this, I mean, I think this is a great idea, but I think there's a hole in like what we need to know. And it could just be in part of the, you know, in flushing out like a potential bylaw, like we could bring them in just for this, you know, instead of like a bigger discussion, just a discussion on congregate living or whatever it's going to be called.
Let's do this. Let's, you know, I just asked Chris to do a little bit of research about what he's seeing kind of as any kind of standard or, you know, in the planning sphere, you know, he can tap into his planner network. And then Pedro, if you've got a couple of examples and you want to share that with the board, you know, new projects, that'd be great. And if we have, or you have found a template of zoning language, something that we could look at as a start, then we could bring this up at one of our next meetings. And talk about it a little bit more specifically in terms of whether or not it makes sense to take to town meeting. And I think in that process, Jeremy, what you're suggesting is really important. You know, I don't know how much they're going to be able to tell us about what they need versus them just sort of seeing an opportunity and trying to like best fit into it. But I'm absolutely not opposed to making sure they're part of the conversation, and we would do a lot of public outreach anyway.
Yeah, it just occurred
Yeah.
to me that we could just add a definition for lodging house. Except.
That's
that
where
would-
we started, right? Was
Yeah.
like, can we tweak our own
Actually,
definitions?
I think we should look at all of those things
Yeah.
that address congregate living in
Yeah.
different- in
Yeah.
different ways.
That-
Wait, finally, I've been wanting to do this for like 3 years. Finally.
For like a year.
And we should probably put it all under one category, maybe there's different sections in that category, but it should all be under one.
I love it.
And it should be clear and it should be compatible with.
How would you, since you only have one other board or committee to go to, like to take that on? You like to wordsmith anyway, so
Do it.
Yeah, sure,
would you do that?
I could try, I'll have to work with Pedro though, that's a chore.
You can talk to him on the phone.
You can email me. You can Zoom.
I would love it if you would take a crack at that, Jonathan. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Okay. Hooray. Do we want to discuss anything else about housing opportunity?
Can we take cottage housing out of the next agenda? Cause I have no idea what that is.
I was gonna ask where that came from also. Okay, good.
Cottage meat.
Cottage housing.
Bungalows.
There was some very brief discussion,
basically
right, Chris,
for-
about whether or not that was a zone we wanted to
Cottage
think
house.
about adding as like a
Yeah,
starter home
it's the thing.
zone or
Well,
something along those lines.
Cottage housing,
That's,
the way it
Yeah.
is, but not the way this one's being developed.
Oh,
We're not
that's why
going
that's
there.
it.
We're
That's
not
why
going there. That's not, but did we have that, Chris, as starter home zone? I think it was one of the recommendations that came out of somewhere that's rattling around in my head.
There is.
Okay,
by
we'll
the
take it
way,
out for future.
Is that what cottage housing is, small house?
Sorry,
It's
it's-
around
Small.
a central area.
Yeah,
Did you bring, I missed why you got into starter homes, but there's a substantial language in 48 for starter home districts.
mhm.
There's a- I don't, you know, for
I don't
some
know.
reason it was a thing, but I think maybe I brought it up or I sent something, and it didn't seem to make sense for us.
No,
No,
we don't,
It didn't-
we don't have undeveloped areas.
exactly. It didn't seem to make
Right.
sense. We don't have it.
We'll take it out for the next.
It's for like districting, like creating starter home districts, and we don't have places where you can do that.
Well, we've got the Monument Mills.
And then the money, but we also don't have the money, like it's, we
Yeah.
can say, you know, this parcel of land is only for starter homes, but.
Yeah.
The starter home, it costs how much money to build nowadays, you know?
I know, it's true.
Can I ask a question
Go for
about
it, Jeff.
tiny houses?
Yes,
We've approved tiny houses.
we have.
But we have not allowed tiny houses to have wheels.
No, yes, we
They
do.
have to have wheels.
They have to have
They
wheels.
do, that's the standard, they're
Okay,
built.
so then they don't get taken off their wheels, so they're mobile.
Right.
Okay,
But they have to have permanent hookups.
skirt,
Yeah,
And plants to cover the wheels, or
and a
something.
skirt.
A skirt.
is that in the code?
Plants.
and that comes partially from the state building code also.
Oh, that's-
Yeah, because they're built, no, they're built to
They're built to
they are
a
built
mobile
to an
home
RV
stand. Yeah,
standard,
yeah.
yeah, they're like an RV.
Yeah.
Which is why you can put a hitch on it and you can drive it around and you can Instagram yourself in all these Instagrammable spaces in your tiny home.
And you pay excise and not property on it.
There you go.
You pay property on it.
Oh, yeah, the property. It's
Well,
not.
Okay, so Jeremy, board subcommittee updates, issues or concerns? CPC, anything
Uh,
exciting?
Well, yeah, so CPC, we did recommend, what was it? 3 of the 4, was 3 of the 4, am I remembering that right, Chris? 3 of the 4 to the special town meeting. Yeah. Not the marble block in this current session, but I think it was kind of like open-ended to come back for the regular session
Okay,
for marble.
okay. So,
And then we just met this past, was it yesterday? Yes, for the housing subcommittee. And so we're in the housing subcommittee, we're gonna try to meet. The plan is hopefully to bring in a couple of more, 2 more members, because Garfield is of the trust, to come in and speak with at our next meeting, which is in October. It's the last Wednesday in October. And then I think it's 2 weeks later on that Wednesday to have a private developer come in and then talk about some of their experiences in developing locally.
Okay. Okay. All right, well, we
And-
will look
yeah.
forward to updates. Anything else for you?
No, but I'll send around those dates.
Okay, I had October
Sorry,
28th
I
as
have
the
a weird
last
view on my
Wednesday.
phone.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so it's the next one is October 27th. Wednesday, October 27th. Oh, sorry, no, Wednesday, October 25th at 5:30, and then November 8th, Wednesday at 5:30.
Thank you so
And
much.
we did, if anyone cares, we did set, but not the agenda for the December meeting, which is the Wednesday, the 13th at 5:30, which seems to be our thing now, Wednesdays at 5:30.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Jeremy. Jonathan, any board subcommittee updates, issues, or concerns?
I have a question.
Okay.
Which is not a subject. I was trying to attend the ComCom last night by Zoom,
Okay,
and it was not Zoomable. The agenda said it was.
Hmm.
And gave a number you could call as well, and I tried both of those, and it was not. And it turned out that the chair wasn't there, and she had
oh,
the
interesting.
password, but they held the meeting anyway.
Uh-huh.
Is that still a legal meeting?
I am not an attorney and I don't know.
What do you think, Chris?
I'm not an attorney and I don't know.
Where'd you get that?
I do.
Eileen
Um,
does.
I asked the head of the Division of Open Government, and she said that if the members are there in person, even if the Zoom connection does not work, they will still consider it a valid meeting.
Okay,
Otherwise, it's discouraging people from attending by Zoom, and it gets very complicated.
okay.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thanks for that.
I'm so glad to be able to share information.
She's not an attorney either, but she talked to the head of the Division of Open Government.
No, that's good.
Jackie, anything for you?
Talking about the deck, Steve Dietman and I met with Chris the other day, because the committee is deeply into exploring what we should be doing, how we go forward, and we have the opportunity of having a new business building inspector,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives us a chance to rethink things
Mm-hmm.
and refocus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are.
Okay, so progress is being made though?
Progress.
Excellent, thank you. Pedro? Nothing? Malcolm?
Well, we have the BRPC annual dinner next week. I hope everybody's signed up for that, or some people who could.
I'm gonna be there.
Cool. I cannot drive up with people because I have another meeting an hour beforehand at BRPC, but I will see you there.
Okay,
Could you send that out again as a reminder, because
Yes,
I did not sign up.
it's not too late. I'm sure they'll take your money.
Chris will buy it for us.
on my list, I just realized we don't have a town planner's report.
Oh, it's not on the agenda?
You approved the agenda.
I did, I'm so sorry.
Not allowed to speak now?
No,
Not on
we'll
the agenda.
do that in a minute. So, in terms of the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force, I think Eileen sent something around, but, kudos to the town and especially to Chris for putting a grant application together and being successful and getting that grant for some of those improvements. So thank you very much. Is it more than the MVP grant? Did we get
The second
it's
MVP grant.
second MVP grant?
There's a meeting on the
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. So we're gonna have a community meeting regarding the progress and proposed construction improvements at Lake Mansfield by Zoom on October 5th at 6:30, and the details will be forthcoming and posted. That hasn't been posted yet, right?
It has been posted.
Oh, it has been. Okay, thank you for posting
It
that.
was in the press release.
Great. So hopefully you guys will all come and participate in that. The only other thing I wanted to say was, I just want to acknowledge the town for, making progress on sidewalks. So I'm super excited, several years ago, we did Chris asked for an assessment of like where there were gaps in sidewalks, and we're slowly chipping away at them.
Yeah, the drain on West Avenue.
So there's a West Ave section of sidewalk that's been missing that goes around a fairly scary curve if you're a walker.
I'm not sure where it's leading to though.
It connects the existing sidewalk on West Ave
Yeah.
to the existing sidewalk on Maple Ave,
I see.
which I've seen a lot of people walk that
And
curve.
speaking of Maple Avenue, they've actually started construction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
did you see
so
that?
just thank you for keeping the sidewalk progress moving forward. I think that's really great that we're doing that to make the town more walkable. And yes, and if you haven't been by the nursing home, they have started in earnest exterior construction. A lot of
At least excavation.
A lot of excavation, yes. So to the extent we're permitted by law, do you want to give us a?
I
The
don't
town
have
planners
anything to add, except the special town meeting will be held on the 23rd of October.
Okay, so we need that in the calendar, thank you.
Is the agenda finalized, John?
I think the board votes on it this coming Monday.
Okay, great, thank you. If there are no more board or committee updates, we'll do citizen speak, so nothing. Anybody online have citizen speak? James or Eileen? Raise your hand if you do.
They love having the otter.
All right, seeing no board or committee or no citizen speak, we'll adjourn at 7:21. Thank you, everybody.